Good evening, everyone, again. So tonight we are presenting our final presentation or our final iteration of the proposed 26-27 budget to the community before the board adopts it. Per the New York State Constitution, the state is mandated to produce a budget by April 1st. I don't know if anyone's looking at their calendar. It's past that. We don't have a budget. Apparently today, the state has passed their fourth budget extender, which extends the state budget through April 20th. The holdups apparently are not related to school districts finance, maybe one, but scaling back the provisions of the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, legislation to reform the state's car insurance laws, which is intended to lower car insurance, and changes to, and this one might affect us, is changes to the Tier 6 of the New York State retirement system, and that could impact school districts. Per New York State's Council of School Superintendents, the legislature and governor continue to show no sense of urgency to complete the budget, and the chance of an April 20th budget adoption is close to zero. So I think there'll be another extender next week. Late budgets aren't unusual for the state. Out of the last 40 state budgets, 10 have been approved on time. So we're not looking, striking a good batting average there. 2019 was the last on-time budget for New York State. So while their timeline can be unpredictable, our timeline is governed by strict legal mandates that ensure transparency to our taxpayers. Following tonight's anticipated adoption, we are required to transmit our property tax report card to New York State Ed Department within 24 hours, and that formally kicks off our public process leading up to the statewide vote in May. So since we presented to you in March, we've had some updates. Our leadership team has been working diligently to sharpen their pencils. On this slide, you'll see two key adjustments that we made that totaled over $500,000 in positive movement since our last presentation. First, we have been able to increase our revenue, specifically BOCES aid, for $300,000. That is directly linked to our dual enrollment COSER. This is a win for both our students and our bottom line. Secondly, in relation to that as well, on the other side of it, we were able to achieve $250,000 in an expense reduction in the BOCES budget. Again, on the topic of dual enrollment. The salaries for the staff that teach those programs were already budgeted in another line on our budget, so we did not need to budget for that on the BOCES expense line as well, so we removed that. This slide is providing you a high-level overview of our expenditure budget. Our total proposed expenditures is $116,316,911. This represents a 5.96% increase from the prior year, or about $6.5 million. While this is a significant increase in number, it's actually lower than last year's year-over-year increase of 6.3%. A few key highlights: salaries and benefits. It's important to note that approximately 76% of our budget is our people, salaries and benefits. Increases in these lines are driven largely by contractual obligations, rising health insurance premiums and pension contributions, costs that are largely outside of the district's control, but are essential in retaining our dedicated workforce. Our health insurance budget alone is growing by approximately 15.5%, or $3 million, which is about 46% of our entire $6.5 million growth in our budget over last year. Despite the 15.5% increase in insurance premium, the overall fringe benefits line is only going up 8.8% based on a few factors. We have a little bit of a savings from a lower teacher retirement systems contribution rate from 9.59 down to 8.24. We did reduce our health insurance line by about $575,000. That is the line that does contain our contingency that we maintain in the budget. We always try to maintain between 4 and 5% of our budget and contingency to accommodate for any unexpected expenditures in the next year's budget. And if at the end of the year we don't use that, we like to have that available to us to put into our reserves. We did reduce that in next year's budget. We also have savings in the employer portion of Social Security due to lower salaries realized when we had the reduction in the staffing attrition, the reduced salaries as a result of that. Sometimes you don't replace the position or other positions are replaced with a lower salary employee. So that impacted that. Our tuition line is another notable line. That's going up about $485,000 due to additional outside placements for students with disabilities, and also taking a look at some of the historical spending on that line. Our BOCES line is another line that's increasing. I know I like to talk about how we shift our cost to BOCES. That is increasing $824,000 or 9.22%. Again, we just continue to keep shifting our expenses over there. On the revenue side of things, when we get to look at that, you're going to see almost more so of an offsetting revenue associated with that as well. So you'll see that on the revenue slide. Our contractual line is going up $461,000, but about half of that is our increase in utilities and insurance. Overall, I think the important takeaway is that while our budget is increasing by 5.96%, we are reducing staffing only through attrition and finding some strategic efficiencies. We're staying within our class size parameters, and not reducing any programming for our students. So while we're spending more to maintain our current staff, but we're adopting a more efficient team structure. Our overall revenue, now that we've seen the $116 million in expenses, let's look at how we want to pay for that. Our total projected revenue is about $110,272,328. That's up 3.92% over the prior year, or $4,159,233. Our funding relies on two main sources: property taxes and state aid. The tax levy represents about 60% of our budget. We're proposing a tax levy increase of $2,596,939, which is a 4.29% increase, which is within the state mandated tax cap. Our state aid is the second largest portion of our revenue, totaling $42,061,161,480. Totaling $110,272,328. Giving a breakdown of our state aid, the largest portion of our state aid is foundation aid, coming in at $27,642,219. That's a $555,000 increase, or 2.2%. Foundation aid is the most flexible portion of our budget to be used for supporting things like staffing costs and health insurance and such. Unfortunately, we aren't seeing a growth in that number that keeps pace with the growing expenditures that we're having. The next three lines are all expense-based aids, and I know we've talked about this before. Our building aid is going down slightly just due to some older debt service payments that are falling off the schedule. Again, as we look at the BOCES aid line, our strategy of shifting more of our some expenses through into our BOCES expense lines is causing a 35% increase in our BOCES aid for next year, totaling over $1 million. That efficiency offsets almost the rising costs that you saw in the expenditure slide. Similarly, same thing with transportation. That is an expense-based aid. That increase in that aid is really directly related to the increased cost in transporting our students. So when you put it all together, the challenge is pretty clear. We have revenue of $110 million and expenses of $116 million, producing a $6 million budget gap. So for several years, the district operated without the need to use fund balance to balance their budget, especially during times when we had the pandemic era aid, and we were given the additional aid to become fully funded in foundation aid. So we're at that point now where we're having to start looking at ways to raise our revenue and also to be efficient in our expenses. So the increased use in fund balance really is a result of that structural jaw. We have mandated expenses like salaries, healthcare, special ed costs, BOCES costs. They're growing at 5.96% overall. In comparison, our revenue is only capped this year. It's 3.92%. So that is fund balance is bridging that gap this year. But that's not sustainable long term. So the future ramifications of using fund balance and increasing our fund balance to balance our budget. It's like using your personal savings account to pay your monthly electric bill. It works in the short term, but it's not sustainable. Again, I mentioned that expenses are growing at a larger rate, creating a compounding structural deficit. Spending now, our savings now reduces financial flexibility and our ability to fund future emergencies or mid-year state aid cuts. And when we keep money in our reserves, it earns interest. If we spend it all to plug a budget gap, we lose that ability to grow our reserves passively through interest income. Our path forward involves reducing the use of appropriated fund balance from $6 million to below $5 million next year, ideally $4 million, through fiscal discipline, capturing efficiencies and finding every possible savings in the 26-27 budget year to ensure that we don't have to rely so heavily on one-time funds. The less we have to rely on fund balance to balance our budget, the more we can use those savings to bolster our reserve accounts. The reserves help our district save for future unexpected financial demands, capital projects, or equipment expenditures, thereby mitigating the need for tax hikes. Reserve funds are vital for financial stability and long-term planning. On the agenda tonight for approval is the 26-27 budget in the amount of $116,316,911 to be voted on by the district voters on May 19th, 2026. You will also see on this year's ballot our annual budget proposition for our fleet replacement, totaling $1.5 million. These are 8 diesel buses that are financed over 5 years. That generates transportation aid, one of the expense-based aids we talked about earlier. A consistent replacement cycle for our vehicles, maintains safety, and keeps our expenditures in aid at appropriate levels. Upcoming dates on our budget calendar: Tuesday, May 5th at 7 p.m. at the Junior Senior High Performing Arts Center is our budget hearing and a meet the candidates night. Tuesday, May 12th from 3 to 7 in the district office is voter registration for those who have not already voted in the registered to vote in the general elections. And all this is culminating to May 19th. From 6 to 9 is voting at the early childhood school boardroom. Right here is the vote and the Board of Education election. Additionally, it's transparency is not just about sharing numbers at a board meeting. It's also about being available to answer your questions. So over the next month, there's going to be several opportunities to learn more about the budget and answer questions, ensuring every member of our community understands the plan that we've put forward. At this time, if anybody has any questions.
I just want to add one thing, that the $555,000 increase, I believe, in foundation aid is approximate because of what Christine said at the beginning. They don't have a budget yet. So we are hypothesizing that we're going to receive a 2% increase in foundation aid. That $555,000 is the 2%. There's a slight chance we could get less than that, which would mean we'd need more fund balance. There's a chance we'd get more than that, which would mean we'd use less fund balance. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, that that was an approximate number and could change.
Correct.
Christina, I think I unfortunately know the answer to this, but is there any recourse for the districts in the state of New York with the state consistently kicking the can down the street as far as the budget being on time for the planning purposes? Because I can't imagine we're the only district that could potentially be hamstrung because of the lack of preparedness of the state. And it just seems, maybe we have no recourse whatsoever, I don't know, but it feels a little unjust.
I'm not aware of any recourse. I think if we had some, I think some advocacy would have been done, and since 30 out of the last 40 have not been on time. So
they got it right when we had a global pandemic. They seemed on time.
Yeah. So no, I don't think that there really is, and it really does hamstring districts into making decisions that based on estimates. We do get a governor's budget in January that kind of provides a little bit of insight into where things might shake out. So we go on that. Some of the things are formula based. So unless they're changing and there's conversations about the formula, some things we can count on. I'm pretty confident in the transportation, the expense based aids. Of course, those are based on expenses during the 25-26 school year, which don't get finalized until we're done with the 25-26 school year and submit that information in the fall. So there's always a little slight risk that might not be as much as we think it's going to be, but it's pretty close. We do provide estimates to the state of what we expect our full year spending will be for those expenses. So we're pretty close on those numbers. It's that foundation aid that's, unfortunately, we don't know for sure. But we've been working on advocacy and speaking with our representatives, and from what we're hearing, we could expect the 2%. So we went with that.
Okay, thank you. Because I mean, so essentially, and I applaud the ladies and gentlemen to my left and to my right as far as the advocacy that these board members that I'm looking at have really done with our legislators. And I mean, I feel that we are perhaps publicly viewed as, well, we're Victor, we're in good shape. We are, just because we're big and very successful, we are a district that still counts every penny, and I just appreciate the diligence that you and Dr. Terranova and everybody else, as far as your cabinet and your staff, have done to get us at least to this point where, as you said, we're not losing good people and we're not increasing class size parameters. And we're staying true to better class size parameters than actually New York State establishes as acceptable class size parameters. So thank you very much, because it's a yeoman's job.
Christine, if we get around 2%, or if we happen to get a little bit higher, we'll just adjust. Nothing changes at the end of the day number. It's just how we arrive at that number as a district.
Right. So you know, in a perfect world, if revenues matched expenses and we ended up getting at this point in this, and we find out that we're getting more, that's just going to help you at the end of the year have extra funds to put in a reserve, or reduce in this situation for us now, reduce the amount of fund balance that you use.
So a potential albeit unlikely, increase in foundation aid does not change that end of the day total number for our budget, just for people at home who, it's just lots of numbers from different pots.
Correct. So that's why when we submit, they make that within 24 hours after the board produces or approves the budget tonight. That is the number that's locked in at the state, and then everything else triggers from that. There's a property tax report card, there's the budget notice, a lot of forms that need to be submitted to the state. So we are kind of, our hands are tied because there are certain milestones that have to be met along the way between now and May 19th, things that need to be produced and communicated to the community. So, yeah, there's no changing that bottom line number. It just helps us reduce our use of fund balance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? We will take a motion, and then we will do a roll call vote. So can I have a motion to adopt, the 2026-2027 district budget?
Elizabeth?
A second?
Tim?
Okay, I will turn it over to our district clerk, Kate.
Thank you. And I will just read that resolution. When I'm done, I'll do a roll call vote. If you agree with that resolution, if you could say yes, and if you do not, please say no. Resolved that the Victor Central School District Board of Education does hereby accept, I'm sorry, I am reading the wrong. Resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the proposed budget for the 2026-2027 school year be approved as submitted for a total of $116,316,911, subject to approval by the qualified voters of the district at the annual vote and election on May 19th, 2026. Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mrs. Prescott,
Yes.
Dr. Parks,
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mrs. Kostecki,
Yes.
and Mr. DeLucia.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried.